we win. We have to take it to the Republicans and leave them no space and no quarter. I'm taking it. I would like to introduce you to the next governor of Texas.
Whoa! Hey, Longview, how are you doing? Good to be with you. Great to be with you. JJ asked you to stand, I'm going to ask you to sit. So, I can imagine Mary Lou Tebaugh's daughter or granddaughter 20, 30, 40 years from now introducing somebody who's come to address the people in Longview in this very skating rink. And that person in that day and age, so distant from today, is going to say, you are sitting and you are standing in the same place that Ella Fitzgerald and Elvis Presley and Buddy Holly and Willie Nelson and Congressman Jamar Jefferson all sang to the people of Longview. The biggest push. And I love everything that Jamar just said, including the fact that hope is not something that we wait on. It's not somebody riding to the rescue. It's not the words that somebody conveys. It's not the aspiration that we feel in our heart. It is the work that we're willing to do in order to achieve it. And I have seen JJ everywhere. He is the first one there, the last one to leave, talking to everyone. That wonderful story that Mary Lou just told us, that's not the exception. That is the rule with this guy. And I know that he could care less whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, what's in your bank account, who you pray to, how you love, how many generations you've been in this country, or whether you got here yesterday. He's going to treat you with the respect and dignity that you deserve as a human being, right? That's what we're going to get back to in Texas. It's a big way to be. I want to thank Mary Lou for organizing, bringing us together, and introducing us today. It was 2016, maybe early 2017, when I first met Mary Lou in Austin, Texas. We were both there for a Democratic Party event. And she asked me, have you ever been to Longview? And I said, Longview is as far away from El Paso as you can get and still be in the same state. So no, of course I've never been to Longview. Why do you ask? And she said, believe it or not, there is something really special happening in this community right now. She said, I am part of this movement, of this cause that is growing in response to all the hatred and the fear and who are we supposed to be against. And this is something that's really big, she said. It's people from every walk of life coming together and willing to do the work in order to win elections. Will you come out? That's when will you see us? And I did in 2017, and here I was, an unknown candidate for the United States Senate from El Paso, Texas, and you all showed up in record numbers in order to welcome us. And it made me feel very early on in that campaign that we were doing the right thing at the right time with the right people. And all of us working together with Mary Lou at the lead. You know what we did? Even though we didn't beat Cruz in that race, although we got close, we helped to produce the largest voter turnout in the history of the state of Texas going back to 1970. Young voters, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, young people, the turnout for them was up more than 500% from the previous midterm election in the state of Texas. We helped get behind great candidates like Cody. 12 Democrats replaced 12 Republicans in the state legislature that year. We flipped control of the House of Representatives by electing 2 Democrats to replace 2 Republicans in the state of Texas in Congress. In Harris County, Houston, Texas, 17 African-American women were elected to judicial positions, literally changing the face of criminal justice in the most diverse city in America. We all did that together. And the way that you're meeting this moment right now, here in this rink, makes me so proud and so grateful to be standing with you. This is a really tough time for us in Texas. For some more than it is for others. You're raising a transgender child. You're doing your best to love that kid and help them navigate and understand the changes that they're going through right now. Imagine what other kids in that classroom are saying to them. Imagine what they're thinking about themselves when somebody directs so much hatred and fear and intolerance at them. And then the governor of your state, the most powerful person in Texas, says, I'm going to pursue you for child abuse. And I'm going to take that kid that you're loving the heck out of and every one of their brothers and sisters away from you. I'm going to turn them over to CPS, a foster care system with 32,000 kids in it today, where tonight, many of them will be sleeping in those CPS offices, in the hallways, under the desks, on top of the tables. Ladies and gentlemen, we as Texans, because it's on all of us until we change this, we've lost the lives of 100 children in CPS care just since the year of our Lord, 2020. So if you're in that situation right now, I just want to tell you, I've got your back. I hear you. We're going to fight for you. It doesn't matter the differences between us. We're going to come together. If you're a woman in the state of Texas, after half a century following Roe versus Wade, when Jane Roe, as you all know, was our fellow Texan, her two attorneys, Linda Coffey in Dallas, Sarah Weddington from that liberal bastion of Abilene, Texas, successfully argued her case to make her own decisions about her own body. These incredibly personal, private, and sometimes painful decisions. They won that right by arguing that case in front of an all-male United States Supreme Court. You're a woman in this state right now, and the protection for that right that Texas women won half a century ago has been stolen from them. Abortion now outlawed with no exception for rape, no exception for incest. In a state that now leads much of the developed world in the rates of maternal mortality, because as you close down all these reproductive health care clinics, not only is it impossible to get an abortion, in these underserved communities and counties, try getting a cervical cancer screening, or seeing a family planning provider, or seeing a doctor of any kind in the least insured state in America. A legislature that now threatens to check your travel papers if you're of childbearing age and you want to cross the border into another state. You cannot make this shit up. It is happening right now in the state of Texas. I hear you. I'm going to fight for you. I understand what you're going through. For those in the LGBTQ community who thought that marriage equality was a victory finally won after all of your hard work, your advocacy, the indignity that you suffered for years, and to know that that victory could be taken back from us, that progress is not inevitable, that the future is yet to be written, and the other side has the pen right now, threatening to end that equality, threatening to go after intimacy between same-sex couples, and to revive the sodomy laws on the books in the state of Texas, even going after contraception. Again, stranger than fiction, it's happening in our country, and this is the hotbed. This is the place, the laboratory, where they cook this stuff up and attack our fellow Texans and then try to export it across the rest of this country. I just want to tell you, I understand what's happening right now. The attack that you face, the fear that you live under, this thought that's entered your head that maybe you're in the wrong place and you should move somewhere else because this state is not safe for you. I just want to tell you that I'm with you. We're going to fight for you. We are running this race. We're going to win this election to make sure that we treat everybody with the respect and the dignity that they deserve, to make sure that you can live to your full potential and fill your promise right here in the state of Texas. To the school teacher who's now being told which version of history she is allowed to teach. Because when you've got a governor who cannot keep the lights on or the heat running or the water flowing in the energy capital of the world, a governor who has not fixed this CPS system that I just described, a governor who is messing up at every opportunity to lead, 9 weeks since Uvalde, My kids go to their first day of school on Monday, and nothing has changed to ensure that they are safer, that their teachers are better protected, that it is less likely that an 18-year-old is going to buy not one, but two AR-15s, hundreds of rounds of ammunition for that weapon that was originally designed for use on a battlefield, because all it is intended to do is to kill human beings. That high-impact, high-velocity round, it hits your body, it destroys all of the soft tissue inside of you, your organs, your vessels, your arteries. You bleed out because you've been pulverized inside before anyone else can get to you. When we bring that up, he says, look over here, CRT. I want to scare you about your own history. I want to scare you about people who do not represent the caricature that we've often held out to be who Texans are and what our story is. I want to tell that teacher right now, I know that you're not getting paid enough. I know that right here in Grade County, on average, you're underpaid by $9,000 a year against the national average. Not the highest paid teacher in America, just to get to par, you're $9K down. I know you're working a second job because tonight, Friday night, when we allow ourselves a cold beer at the bar, there's a good chance that the person serving it to me is going to tell me, you know what, Beto, I took this job on for the privilege of being able to support myself as a kindergarten teacher, so on Monday, I can focus on those kids. I know that if you're a retiree from the school system, you have not seen a cost of living adjustment since the year of our Lord, 2004. And I hear you when you tell me, those of you in the classroom, that after 2 years of pandemic, after these kiddos have lost their grandparents in some cases, after their folks have lost their jobs, maybe they've lost their homes, they're bouncing from one couch to another, you are just trying to keep these kids alive. You say, listen, I don't need another high stakes, high pressure test. Beto, cancel the STAR so I can focus on the well-being of these kids. I hear you. I'm going to fight for you. We are going to have your back. For those of you who do not have insurance, in the least insured state in America, where people die too often of curable cancers, of diabetes, of the flu, right now we're in one of these mental health care deserts. Shamara was talking about this a little bit, where it is near impossible for far too many to see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, a social worker, anybody. Our largest provider in Grade County and throughout this state of mental health care services right now is the county jail system. How often have I been at a meeting just like this, where someone stands up and they say, hey Beto, my brother with schizophrenia, untreated, uninsured, gets arrested on purpose at the cost of $120 a night to the Grade County taxpayer, to be taken to the one place where they're guaranteed a cot, a change of clothes, some supervision, maybe if they're lucky, some psychotropic medication that makes it okay to get through the night, and then a day or two later, they're back out on the streets. I just want to tell you, I hear you. We're going to fight for you. We're going to do everything we can to meet this moment with our resolve, with our determination, with our courage. And yes, there's something that is hope, but hope born of action. So there are folks in yellow vests throughout the room. They are not construction workers as far as I know, but maybe that's their day job. They are willing to sign you up to go knock on doors. And Mary Lou recognized the volunteers who are willing to do that right now. That's what it's going to take. If you want to make sure that we expand Medicaid and bring $10 billion more in a year to connect people with mental health care, to take us from first in the nation in childhood diabetes death to last, because no kid should have to worry about that. If you want to make sure that we're paying teachers enough so they only work one job instead of 2 or 3, and replace that STAR test with something teachers come up with, because I will appoint a teacher as the TEA commissioner in the state of Texas.
Yeah! Woo!
We want to make sure that we protect marriage equality, that we stop this pursuit of transgender kids, that we restore the protection for the right of every woman to make her own decision about her own body and her own future. Then And I'll be honest with you, it's not going to be easy. It's very hot out there right now. And we've just started the day. It's only going to get hotter. But the only way we're going to win is not through me, it's not through this party, it is all of us. And you talking to a neighbor, to somebody in this community, and with your own words, from your own heart, describing why you came out here today, why you showed up on their door, man, that is powerful. It is profound. It is so much stronger than any TV ad we could run. No matter how brilliant, what are the chances someone's going to catch that ad? And that they haven't developed an immunity to political advertising already. Same for that mailer that they may just allow to collect dust on their kitchen counter or their breakfast table. They may or may not follow us on social media, and if they do, I may or may not be making an impact. But if you show up at their door, another human being, eyeball to eyeball, face to face, in this age where we're consumed by our digital devices, we're divided along the lines of our differences. If you choose to come together and show up for that person, I guarantee you they are so much more likely to vote in this election. Check this out. In 2020, arguably the most important presidential election of our lifetimes, maybe in the lifetime of this country going back to at least 1864, in 2020, when the choice was pretty damn clear, 20,000 residents of Gray County who were eligible to vote didn't cast a ballot. Since then, 7,000 people have entered the rolls. Those are young people, those are naturalized citizens. These are folks who, like Jamar in his first election, may have been eligible for a while and just never got around to registering to vote in a state that makes it harder to register than any other. 27,000 people in this community whose voices we have yet to hear from, whose votes have yet to be counted. Some folks will try to make you think this is a red state. Some will even try to make you believe that it's about to be a blue state. The most accurate thing that we can say is that it is currently a non-voting state. The only way to change that is to show up on the doors of those who've been targeted for voter suppression, who've been targeted for voter intimidation, the very people Greg Abbott decided aren't going to participate in this election. We show up for them. We invite them into this election, into our very democracy, and I'll tell you what, on the night of November 8th, they will provide the margin of victory in this election when we win. Are you all ready to join us? We're going to need your help. I'm going to close with this, and then we're going to turn the microphone over to you. Because my best hope of serving this community effectively as governor is to first listen to this community, to learn from you, to understand what's most important to you, and then to make sure we can hit the ground running in January. I mentioned all the challenges that we face. I love the way that you're meeting them with work, by literally showing up here right now, a willingness to talk to the people in the community who can decide the outcome of this. Think about this over the coming months when you're out there knocking on doors and it's so hot. When the prognosticators and the pundits and the pollsters maybe tell you that this is impossible to do. It's been 32 years since a Democrat has won this office in this state. I want you to think about this. All those other attacks that I talked about on our rights, on who we are, this effort to separate us along lines of differences. You know, in Greg Abbott's Texas, it's you or me, right? If you're an immigrant, we're going to make people afraid of you. If you're gay, we're going to attack you. If you're a woman, we're going to withdraw your rights. In our Texas, it's you and me, right? We're going to bring people together and find a way, regardless of our differences. No me importa if you're a Republican or Democrat. We're going to find a way to do the big things that I just talked about right now. But as you are tried, because it's so hot, because you doubt, because you're tempted to despair, think about this. Very few generations have been afforded the opportunity to save their country, to save their state in the way that ours has. If you think about this attack on democracy, for example, it's not just January 6th of last year, although that was really important, and there needs to be justice and accountability at the end of the day. It is everything. It is everything that is followed. You know, take no satisfaction out of the fact that that insurrection was repelled and that Joe Biden was eventually sworn in as the President of the United States. The effort to undermine this democracy continued apace in Texas more than anywhere else. When they changed our election laws last year to make it harder to register and vote, to make this the state that is hardest to register to vote, the consequence was, in this March primary election, 13% of the mail-in ballots cast were rejected. Not 13% of the people stayed home or couldn't figure out the rules or couldn't get to a polling place. They literally took the time to request that ballot. The ballot was mailed to them. They filled it out. They sent it in 13% of the time. 13 out of 100 times, it got rejected. Now, if we were watching the news tonight, and they said we just had elections in Venezuela, and 13% of the ballots cast were rejected, we'd say, well, that makes sense. It's not a real democracy. But is that us? Well, it is right now. A 95-year-old World War II veteran who put his life on the line to fight fascism overseas, to defend democracy here at home in 1943 and 1944. He had his request to mail his ballot in denied by the state of Texas, not once, but 3 times. So think about this. As democracy, the exception in world history, the exception on the planet today, this is one of the few places in the history of humankind where it has flourished, as it comes under its greatest attack ever, probably since the Civil War. As women are under attack unlike any time that I can think of, certainly in my lifetime. As communities of color are targeted for disenfranchisement and intimidation and suppression when it comes to our democracy. When the LGBTQ community is having every right they want attacked in the most vicious way. I talked about teachers earlier, I talked about those seeking health care. It's enough to make you tempted to despair. But think about it this way. What other generation that you can think of in our lifetime has had the opportunity to stand and fight when so much has been on the line? You all know that great LBJ speech in the March of '65 when he's trying to convene the Congress to pass the Voting Rights Act. And he's talking about John Lewis, who at 24 years of age had just tried to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge to win the right to vote in Alabama, in Mississippi, in Georgia, and yes, right here in Texas. Regardless of your race, your country of national origin, your gender, he was marching, he was fighting for all of us. And Johnson assembles all the members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats from both chambers, and he said, as it was in Concord, talking about the Revolutionary War, as it was at Appomattox, talking about the victory in the Civil War, so it is today in 1965 as John Lewis leads this fight to expand our democracy and to stand up for the fundamental values that make this country great. And LBJ calls on those members of Congress, overwhelmingly white, and many from the South, which had so successfully, through segregation, prevented African Americans from voting, prevails upon them to do the right thing at the right moment. And by the summer of that year, he's able to get that bill passed, creating, for the first time in American history, a true multiracial democracy. Well, I say, as it was at those periods of time in our history, so it is today in the state of Texas. Never has so much been on the line. Never have so many counted on all of us who are right here today. You have the good fortune, the luck, the opportunity to step up and save Texas at the moment that it must be saved, or it will be lost forever. And think about this. Think about this. When Mary Lou Tebow's great-granddaughter is talking about when Jamar Jefferson sang in this very hall on this day in 2022, they're going to also be talking about all of us, the people of this moment who rose to the challenge, overcame it, won this victory, and set Texas on the right track. It is an honor to be with you. I'm grateful to be in this fight, and I'm looking forward to winning this by and for you. Let's go out there and do this, Longview. All right. Thank you all. Gracias. And listen, we're going to try to get a few questions, a few comments, a few suggestions, a few ideas into the mix. Cynthia Cano, who's standing right back here, has a second microphone. She's going to bring it to you if you raise your hand, and I'll try to be brief in my responses. We'll get as many voices in as we can. You ready, Ms. Scott?
Right. Real quick, if everybody could please just make sure to keep it to one question so we can get to as many people as we can.
Rob?
We need this mic up a little bit, whoever's got the sound.
We need right to work people. We need easier union members that'll help with insurance, wages, and repairs. Is there anything we can do?
Absolutely. Rob, thank you for being here. He's asking about unions, the so-called right to work laws that we have on the books that make it very difficult to organize and use the leverage that workers provide, the value in that workplace, the profits that they produce by the billions, by the trillions. We have a $2 trillion GDP right here in the state of Texas, the 9th largest economy on planet Earth today. And yet we have more people working under a living wage than any other state in the union. That's not right any way you cut it. I don't care your political background or anything else, whether you're a member of a union or whether you're not a member of a union. Let me tell you why I believe in unions. Not all of us are going to end up going to college. Not all of us want to go to college, but every single one of us wants to have purpose and fulfillment and function in our lives. When I go to an IBEW hall, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and I meet these apprentices who are in a 5-year program where they are earning money at the age of 17, 18 years old while they are learning the trade. After those 5 years, they graduate to become a journeyman. They can command 6 figures almost anywhere they go across the state. I meet welders who have the same opportunity, pipe fitters, steel workers, you name it. The trades in this state, which are in such demand, are not being met by the supply right here because we have not connected more of our fellow Texans with this opportunity to pursue these kinds of jobs. In addition to paying more and having a marketable skill, when I talk to these folks in that IBEW hall, they say, I cannot wait to get up and get to work every day. Beto, you keep talking about jobs. This isn't a job for me. This is a calling. This is a career. I thought that was beautiful. But right now in Greg Abbott's Texas, we prevent people from joining unions, from organizing, from being able to earn enough to not work a second or a third job when the minimum wage in the state is $7.25 an hour still. You tell me, with the increase in gas, with the increase in your property taxes, with the increase in your electricity bill, with the increase in medications, whether you can afford to pay the note on your mortgage, feed your kids, and get by on $7.25 an hour if you were only working one job. Furthermore, we are the energy leader of the world right now. I want us to be the energy leader of the world tomorrow. The AFL-CIO, that's the electricians and pipe fitters and steel workers and plumbers and communication workers even of this state have come up with an energy plan for this next century. It creates 1 million high-paying, high-value, high-skilled jobs, making sure that we own the future when it comes to renewable energy, that we own the future when it comes to retrofitting buildings just like these so that they're a little bit more energy efficient. These are going to be union jobs that we want in this state. So we work our way out of the enforced poverty that we have with this artificially low minimum wage. When we win this, we're raising the minimum from $7.25 to $15 an hour. We're going to make it possible for people to organize, going from right to work to right to organize, and we're going to encourage young people to look at unions and the trades and the opportunity to join with their brothers and sisters to command not just a higher wage, but to produce more for this state's economy. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it, Ron.
Yes, right here too.
Hello, my name is Yolanda Romero. I'm a reporter for the Longview News Journal, which is the newspaper here. Earlier you briefly mentioned, the power grid issues that Texas had, especially with the severe weather that occurred last year. So here at Longview, we're not part of ERCOT, and we chose not to be deregulated. Do you think that less deregulation throughout the state would be a good thing and is needed?
Thanks for asking the question. Like you, I mentioned that I live as far away as I can from Longview and still be in the same state. We're not on ERCOT either. So last February, when the temperature plummeted and tens of millions of our Texans went without heat or light or water, we didn't have any interruption in our service because we're connected to the national grid. And when we need to draw down electrons, we can draw them down. When we want to sell them back up to the national grid because we have a surplus, we can do that as well. Makes a lot of common sense. And yet, almost every one of the other counties in Texas is part of this ERCOT grid, which has been unstable and insufficient to the demand for at least a decade. In other words, the governor of the state has been warned over and over again, if we have demand because of a weather event like Winter Storm Uri, we are not going to be prepared to keep the power running. And he chose to do not a thing to help us out. And it resulted in the deaths of more than 700 of our fellow Texans. An 11-year-old boy, I mean, invoke your power of empathy here. 11-year-old boy in Conroe, Texas. His mom cannot pile enough blankets on his shivering body. He dies over the course of that night. A 75-year-old Vietnam-era veteran can't charge his oxygen tank because there's no power to his house. Takes it out to the truck where he's going to charge it there. They find him dead of hypothermia. 700 times, whether it was carbon monoxide poisoning, trying to get warm in your garage with your daughter, or burning up because you started a fire in your apartment because otherwise you were going to freeze to death. That was the cost and the consequence of this guy's inaction. Now, does Greg Abbott want people to die in this way? Of course he doesn't. No one does. But when it's his donors who are calling the tune, when one of them, his company made $2.4 billion when Greg Abbott set the price of gas artificially high during that winter storm emergency. He made $2.4 billion, his company, over 5 days. He turns around and cuts Greg Abbott $1 million campaign contribution check. Just follow the money to understand why we have the otherwise inexplicable. And then to add insult to injury, whether you live here in Longview or in El Paso or any other part of the state, your electricity bills have still gone up on average $45 more per month since that happened. So the question that is begged and being asked by the reporter here in Longview is, what are we going to do about it? Number one, we should winterize and weatherize the grid. So no matter what the extreme weather is, we can still produce power. Last February, gas literally froze at the wellhead in West Texas. We could not get it to the generators. We just need to invest in that. Number two, you all understand it and you live it right now. We are going to connect ERCOT to the national grid so we can get power when we need it, send it back up, and number three, in total, it was $11 billion that was stolen from us over those 5 days. It's the largest transfer of wealth in Texas history. Those energy traders, those pipeline CEOs who are charging more than 200 times the going rate for fuel, not only was that immoral, it was illegal. There's a law on the books in the state of Texas that does not allow you to price gouge our friends, our family, and our neighbors, and specifically cited in that law is the cost of fuel. So for these pipeline folks to come back to your utility, not here but in other parts of Texas, and say, I know we had a contract for X, but I'm now going to charge you 200X, and if you don't like it, your customers are going to freeze to death. Some of these utilities went into bankruptcy. Others took billions of dollars in debt on. So as governor, we are going to pursue those illegally gotten $11 billion in profits and return it to you and every other ratepayer in the state of Texas. Thanks for asking.
I want to say that I'm John Wood, and I've been here in Longview since '69. I'm from upstate New York, and I just want to say you have done a very good presentation of what is involved. And one thing to all you people, yeah, no matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, independent, or what, you do need to get out and vote. That is probably one of the failings that we have in the United States that we have the right to go out and vote. Sometimes it can be hard, and sometimes, you have to make a good effort. But the only way anything is going to change on any sides is everybody get out and vote. One thing that I want to say here, and it was just recently in our paper and in our Longview and Gray County has made a bill and passed that all public workers will get a pay increase. Firemen, police, sanitation, everybody that is a public employee will get a pay raise. Now, of course, there will be possibly different rates and depending on what your job is, but everybody will get a certain percent raise. One other thing that I would like to ask you too is we are having a lot of violence across the whole United States. One of the major things of the violence is that we have lots and lots of laws, stacks of them, that would deal with these people that commit these crimes. One problem, major problem, is now we have prosecutors and judges that you can go out and kill somebody and you can walk out the door before the police that arrest you can fill out the paperwork, and you can walk out the door without paying any bond, $100,000, $500,000. You walk out the door with just a statement saying, yeah, you show up for a trial. And the vast majority of people here are law-abiding citizens. And so all these laws that have been passed, we abide by them. So we don't go out and commit these crimes. Occasionally, somebody does, for whatever the reason, fall on something and they just go crazy. That does happen. But the vast majority of crimes are done by criminal element. And the criminal element, no matter what laws you pass, yeah, they're not going to abide by them. Only you and you and you and me are going to abide by them. So that's what we need to do is take and
All right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wood, for being here. Let me address your question and your comment. Thank you so much. Listen, all of us, especially those of us raising families in this community or anywhere in this state, are concerned about the well-being, the safety, the security of our families, of our communities, especially our kids when they go into these classrooms in a few days in El Paso, maybe a few weeks here in Gray County. Something that you need to know is that ever since our current governor has been sworn in, violent crime in this state has been on the rise. I mentioned that he's a master of distraction. If you want to ask about the grid, he'll tell you about CRT. If you want to ask about rising crime, he'll say, look at those Mexicans. He's going to try to scare you into not paying attention to the things that really matter. Remember when he was signing that bill that outlaws abortion, and a reporter said, Mr. Governor, you realize what you're signing right now makes no exception for rape. And like a deer caught in the headlights, he said, well, we're going to eliminate rape in the state of Texas, so we don't need to worry about that anymore. You need to know this. There are now more rapes committed in Texas than any other state in the union. On the shelves of the Department of Public Safety, those DPS troopers, on their shelves are thousands of untested rape kits. Our ability to bring a rapist to justice, the probability of doing that has declined by half on this guy's watch. And listen, if he wants to get into a conversation about supporting law enforcement and funding the police, I'm there all day, every day. Because when those men and women in this community and every community who wear that badge every day, put their lives on the line, when they begged him not to sign permitless carry into law, which took away our license to carry program, which used to say, look, you want to carry a gun on our streets? We're cool with that. Just go through a background check. Just get some training. Let's make sure that we vet you in case you are a violent criminal, to the gentleman's point, in case you have beat up your wife or your boyfriend, in case you have a history of harming yourself. I just want to make sure that everything's okay and that we protect the public. Check this out. Last 5 years, law enforcement have denied a license to carry to one of our fellow Texans 38,000 times. 38,000 times they deemed this guy or that gal just too dangerous to be armed on our streets. So they went to the governor, police chiefs, sheriffs, or deputies, or officers. They said, please don't do this. It will endanger the lives of our officers and our deputies. It'll make it harder for us to protect and to serve that public that we go out there to help day in and day out. He turned his back on them, signed it into law nonetheless. Ladies and gentlemen, more cops have been gunned down in the state of Texas than any other. We've seen a predictable spike in gun violence, and again, our clearance rate, our ability to solve these crimes has declined dramatically. It's going to try to scare you or make you afraid and to believe in something else altogether. As Jamar said at the beginning, I don't need to listen to what he says, look at his actions. So, we are going to make sure that we fully fund law enforcement. That means the training, that means respecting them when they say this is how we can keep our communities safe. We are also going to hold law enforcement to the highest levels of accountability. If you treat somebody differently based on the color of their skin, if you pull Jamar over for a broken taillight, if you don't pull me over for a broken taillight, if you have guns, ballistic shields, you're on the other side of an unlocked door for 70 minutes while 19 kids are bleeding to death, you are losing your job, and there will be accountability and justice for you as well. All we do is the safety and security of our families and our community. We need to have a governor who will make that a priority. Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Okay, next question right here.
A veteran from Harrison County. Somebody ought to look into VA. You file a claim, and it can take 10, 15 years. I have a sister, she got dementia, and after she got it, then she got reclaimed trouble. After about 15 years, and that's just too long.
Thank you for being here. You said at the outset, we're here and we're kind of the exception to the rule in the history of this world. It's the fact that we have this democracy made possible by those who wore the uniform of this country, who were willing to establish it, to protect it, to defend it. We owe them our greatest gratitude, but we're not demonstrating that. Going back to Jamar's rule, the axiom of JJ, that we've got to look at our actions, not just the words, not just thank you for your service, pat on the back, really glad that you did this so that I didn't have to do that. That stuff doesn't work. When in this state, again, 9th largest economy on the planet, tonight, there will be hundreds of veterans who will be sleeping on the streets, on the bridges, in city parks, because we have yet to find the political will, despite the wealth of resources in this state, to make sure that they have that home, can get the care that they need, the help that will allow them to live a life of dignity. In this same state, we have veterans who returned from Afghanistan and Iraq, who were exposed to these toxic burn pits to God only knows what they were breathing in. And now they're having a hard time breathing back at home, on the job, with their families. They listened to Vietnam-era veterans who said, you know what, buddy? When I came back in 1971, 1968, after my 3 tours of service, exposed to Agent Orange, it took this country 40 years to recognize that exposure as a presumptive condition for the cancers that we now have, for the things that my friends and battle buddies are dying of, for the defects that their children were born with. 40 years for this country to do the right thing. That Vietnam-era veteran says, you know what, we're not going to wait 40 years for you. We're going to do the right thing right now. You talk to veterans who cannot get this care at the VA and aren't connected with somebody who can save their lives. And we hear a phrase from veterans in Texas all too often: it is deny your claim until you die, hoping that you'll just get sick of showing up, calling in, trying to get that appointment. So here's what I propose, given the resources we have, the wealth in this state, and the service exemplified by you and others in Harrison County and every other county in this state. On that issue of homelessness, let's make sure that we pay any price and lift every burden to make sure every veteran has a home, has a roof over their head, and has that dignity that we all take for granted in our own lives. On connecting with care, whether it's exposure to these toxic burn kits, whether it's Vietnam veterans who come back with PTSD or traumatic brain injury and cannot get the help today, if the VA is too slow to respond, let us make available county hospitals, private providers, use state resources to connect those men and women with that care, reduce the rate of veteran suicide in the process. And then this third one, the VA sometimes, all too often, and this is something that is a problem at the national level, local providers are trying to do their best, I know, will prescribe you an opioid to which you may become addicted, from which you may die. And the VA, as only the VA can, once it realizes it has a problem, will cut you off cold turkey and say, good luck, your appointment is in 9 months. That's not working for anyone. And we sometimes wonder, though we shouldn't, why that veteran would be buying heroin on the street or buying opioids illegally, or who would take fentanyl in our communities when we know how dangerous it is. If that's the only way you can medicate yourself and take care of yourself, I don't blame you. You're not a criminal in my eyes. You're someone who needs help. Here's something I've heard from veterans. The one thing, many of them will tell me, that allows me to live with that PTSD, that traumatic brain injury, these signature conditions and wounds of war and service, is access to cannabis or marijuana.
Right.
But if I use that right now, I'm a criminal in the eyes of the law. So what if we do the right thing by these veterans, in addition to connecting them with care, making sure that they have housing, reducing the rate of suicide in our communities, we also make marijuana legal in the state of Texas. And given the fact that Texans of all stripes and backgrounds use marijuana at the same rate, disproportionately, it's going to be black and brown Texans who are stopped, who are frisked, who are put behind bars for possession of a substance that is legal almost everywhere else in this country, who upon release, you all know this, will have to check a box on every employment application form, every student loan application, saying that they have this conviction. It is not enough to make it legal. We must expunge the arrest records for everyone who has served time for having this substance in their possession. Thank you for the question.
Three more questions.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Yes, I'm 87 years old. I've lived in this state for 87 years. My family has lived on 200 acres for 111 years. And my granddad paid $7.50 an acre. I have a great granddaughter here, but she's worried about going to school. She'll be in the 5th grade. Turn around. My wife was a teacher, and she is throwing us paying our Social Security. The law of the books at that time allowed her to do that. Guess what? When the Republicans found out that option was there, they killed it. So teachers working today won't be able to draw half of their husband's Social Security. And that amounts to about $12,000 to $15,000 a year. Families could use that. So we love Beto. She's been out 40 years, the first this year is drawing my Social Security. Thank you, Beto, for that.
Thank you for being here. I want to thank your grandwife for being here. Your wife for being here.
Wow.
really wonderful. Thank you for the contribution. It's everyday Texans like you all who have funded this campaign. 500,000 unique contributions came in over the last 4 months. The largest group of donors to our campaign has been school teachers and public school employees. And so, thank you. Right now. Real quick on this issue, I just want to make sure I address it because it's important to our educators and our retired educators. The gentleman's pointing to this thing called the Windfall Elimination Provision, the WEP, which says, look, you're giving the best years of your life to these kids in this classroom. Maybe you also worked in the private sector, paid in to Social Security, just like every other working Texan, working American. But for some reason, we're going to punish you and not allow you to draw back down what you paid in. Now, maybe there was a time in Texas history when retired teachers were just getting filthy rich on all these benefits, right? You know that I'm being facetious because I have yet to meet a retired teacher who's gotten filthy rich. Probably more likely than not, she's having to work into her retirement because we have not seen the cost of living adjustment since '04, and she's subject to this windfall elimination provision. So this is something, listen, find me the Republican who will argue the point against this. This is something on a bipartisan basis that we can fix. And so I want to thank you for the retired teachers who are in those classrooms, for your granddaughter going into her 5th grade, and my son Henry just completed 5th grade. He said it's the best so far, so this is going to be a great year. And I want you to know, and I want every child, and every parent of every child to know that we're going to fight for you. I know this can be tough. Amy and I are thinking about everything that's happened in this state over the last 9 weeks and everything that hasn't happened in this state over the last 9 weeks, like the governor not calling a special session to address gun violence or improve mental health care spending, or listen to educators, teachers, kids, and parents about how to strengthen and make more safe their schools. But now it's on us. We gave him a chance, he didn't do it. Now it is on us to make it right. There are a little more than 3 months left before this election. And for your granddaughter, if for no other reason, we've got to win it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the contribution.
Two left, a little bit, two left, a little bit, two right.
There we go.
So I just pulled up this article on Texas Tribune that basically talks about what should show redistricting is. So when you are elected governor, how are you going to change that?
The things that we talked about earlier, the darkness that's descended on this state, teachers working 2 jobs, the windfall elimination provision, rights being taken away from women in this state, threatened to be taken away from the LGBTQ community, the fact that we can't keep the lights on for most of the rest of the state when the temperature drops, that's not what most of us want. That's not reflective of our values as a people, as Texans, regardless of our party affiliation. What that really represents is the failure of this democracy. So in Texas, they've shut down 700 polling places over the last 10 years. In the fastest growing state in the union, they've shut down more than twice the number of polling stations from the next closest state. Predictably, those polling stations have been shut down in the fastest growing Black and brown neighborhoods. You may see a picture on election day of folks who are waiting in line 6 hours deep outside of Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas, one of these great historically Black colleges. Part of you is proud. Hey, that's amazing they'd be willing to wait 6 hours. Most all of you, the rest of you, is ashamed that we force anybody to do that. That's a choice that we have made as a state, or at least those Republicans who are in power. Voter ID that says you can use that old license to carry a firearm to prove who you are at that polling place, but you can't use your student ID to do the same. One ballot drop-off location per county during the pandemic, which dissuaded thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people from voting. And then I mentioned the 13% rejection rate of mail-in ballots in March. It's begging the question whether we will be a democracy going forward if we don't fix this now. But perhaps most pernicious, and to use the technical political science term, the shit show that you just described, is the fact that those in power today primarily Republicans, but let's not kid ourselves, Democrats will do this when they get in power as well, is those in power choosing their voters instead of the other way around. They literally get into rooms and they divide the state. They draw people in or out based on their likelihood that they will vote for the incumbent. It's not just Democrats talking about this. In 2017, a 3-judge federal panel, 2 of the judges appointed by Republican presidents, called this a racial gerrymandering because they found that the Republican majority in Texas will more likely than not draw you out of a district to diminish the power of your vote if you are black or if you are brown. So when we say that 7 million Texans did not vote in 2020, it was 20,000 in Gray County, 7 million across the state. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because there's any lack of love for this democracy. It's because we've drawn each other that way by drawing people out of this very democracy. So she's asking for the answer. The answer is when we win, we no longer allow politicians of either party, including mine, into the room. We have citizen-led redistricting commissions that draw these boundaries around common sense lines. I guarantee you more people will be voting, more people will be running, more challenges will win their elections, will have a more vibrant democracy. Thanks for asking.
Okay, here's going to be
Our last one.
we added
Our
one
second to
more.
last, our
Yes.
penultimate. All right.
Hi, my name's Maggie, and these are my friends, and we're first-time voters. It's super exciting. I don't know how it works, but I'll get my dad excited. So basically, my question is, what are you gonna do about the immigration issue on the border? Because there's a lot of stuff going on down there. You know, just curious. That's it. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maggie, for being here, for voting, for making sure that your generation saves the rest of the generations that are here. Maggie asked about immigration, and I mentioned earlier that our current governor will try to distract you or deflect from the things that are most important by trying to scare you about people coming into this country. And Maggie, you may or may not know this, but on the eve of the mass shooting in El Paso at the Walmart in the central part of my town, where a gunman walked in and shot and killed 23 people with an AK-47, he came, he told police after he was arrested to kill Mexicans. He wrote in a manifesto that he published before he walked into that Walmart that he was here to repel the invasion of Hispanics who were taking over the state. Not unlike what we heard from the Buffalo gunman just a couple months ago. Same kind of replacement theory thing about, I'm a white man and I'm being told by my political leaders that my power is being stolen from me by communities of color. Well, on the eve of that shooting in El Paso, Greg Abbott sends out a mailer and is referring to this invasion that we've heard from Donald Trump and others. Donald Trump, who would also call those coming to this country animals, and infestation. Infestation, that's cockroaches, that's rats. Those are things that we want to exterminate and kill. In fact, months before the El Paso shooting, Trump's at one of these MAGA rallies, and he's asking the crowd, what are we going to do about this invasion? And someone in the crowd yells out, shoot them. Well, Greg Abbott, on the eve of that mass murder in El Paso, sends out a mailer and says, Texans, we've got to defend ourselves. We must take matters into our own hands. This young man in Allen, Texas, was listening, heard that message, drove that weapon those 600 miles, opened fire on those people. It wasn't a pure act of evil. Evil it might have been, but it was not completely random. In fact, I predict these kind of things will continue to happen for as long as we have people in positions of power and public trust who will vilify and demagogue immigrants to distract us from real problems and to avoid the solutions necessary, which is what Maggie's asking about right now. What do we do about those who are coming to this country in record numbers today? First, let's look at who's coming. There is, on the one side, people who want to do us harm. They want to traffic fentanyl. They want to traffic in human beings. We must be vigilant against that. We must stop them because it's literally life or death. But I will tell you, they represent an incredibly small percentage of the people who are trying to cross into America. Because on the other side is everybody who wants to come here to work a job that no one born here, for whatever reason, wants to work. Imagine so many farms, ranches, cottages, met people who work in slaughterhouses, in kitchens, tarring on roofs, and very often they come to this country for the privilege of doing some of the toughest jobs. And maybe they make $7.25 an hour, which is a minimum, but sometimes because of their undocumented status, they make less. They have no recourse to the courts. They're just here trying to get ahead, to do better for themselves and to do better for all of us. There are others who want to join family members who are here. And then there's a third category of people who are seeking asylum because to take their kids back to the country from which they came would mean their certain death. Ask yourself this. You all read about that tragedy in San Antonio, Texas, where they discovered dozens of migrants dead in a trailer. Imagine that's you. And for just a second, imagine that's you. We got to invoke our power of empathy. What would compel you to climb up into that trailer? It's not easy, right? It's not like there's a step ladder. You got to kind of hoist yourself up. You got to get in there willingly into this steel box that's about to be closed behind you with no air conditioning at all. Now imagine you're there with your 11-year-old son or grandson. What compels you to reach down and to hoist him up? You don't do this for kicks. You don't do it to steal anybody's job or take their benefits or to get a free ride or free lunch in the United States of America. I would only do that with my 11-year-old son if there were no other choice but to do that in order to save his life. So here's my proposal now. What if we ensured that there was a safe, legal, and orderly path for those who want to come here to work, who want to come here to claim asylum, who want to come here to join their families. Right now, in order to get a work visa to come here and do these hard jobs in Texas is almost impossible for too many, so they just cross in between ports of entry. It doesn't justify it. I don't want people to do it, but we should understand why they do. If you want to join a family member and you live in Mexico and they live right here in Longview and you get in the back of the line, you will wait for 20 years for your application to be processed. Who has 20 years to join their mom or their dad or their brother or their sister? I don't condone it, but I understand why people cross in between ports of entry. If you're claiming asylum and you cannot go back to El Salvador, we make you sit in a squatter's camp on the other side of the border where your kid can be kidnapped or raped or killed. And so I understand, I don't condone it, why you might want to cross in between ports of entry. Texas, which lives this and understands it better than any other state, should be leading the way in rewriting our immigration laws so they reflect our values and our needs and the reality on the ground. When I'm governor, will you help me to get into that position of trust? Will you replace the stunts that we have here with solutions that we need and remain vigilant against the threats that might be coming over? Thank you for asking the question.
Okay, this is going to be our last question, but before we get to it, first, Longview, thank you so much for showing up in such great numbers. So grateful to you. So, right after, we are going to do some pictures. We won't have time for questions, but if you see the Texas flag, we will be there. If you see Susan in the back, that's how you get in. That's how you get in line if you'd like to stay and take a picture. We do have an event after, so I'll just ask that we just do a quick picture. Here we go to our last question.
And if you didn't get your question answered, you're welcome to follow us to Palestine.
Yes.
And if you don't get it on there, we'll be in Lufkin at 6:30 this evening. So thank you for being here.
Hi, my name is River Evers, pronoun she, her. As far as I know, I'm the first openly transgender teacher in Longview. So my question to you is, what kind of policies or protections can you promise to make if you are elected to help protect my LGBT plus brethren? Because I have to fight for my right to have a job every day. I have to worry about what I wear and protection when I go outside, and a lot of other really scary things that people should not have to deal with.
Yep.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your public service, dedicating your life to these kids and their passion, and for asking these questions. First thing we'll do is we're going to rescind this executive order from the governor that targets transgender kids and promises to arrest their parents for child abuse. We're taking that one off the books. We're going to make sure that you, as a Texan, have every protection for the rights that are yours inherently as a human being and certainly as an American. No more of these don't say gay bills that are being proposed for the next legislative session. If they come down the pipe, I will veto them, I promise you. We're going to restore rights that should be there to begin with. As you may know, if you are part of the LGBTQ community, you can be denied the ability to adopt a child. That's not okay, but it is legal today in the state of Texas. Something else that's not okay but legal is you can be denied a job or fired from a job simply based on your sexual orientation in the state of Texas. I want to make sure that we protect and stand up and are proud of all of our fellow Texans. So through executive orders, through legislation, through the veto, but also through this microphone, I'm going to talk about how proud I am of you and everyone else who makes this a better place. Thank you for being here. Longview, thank you for coming out. Because I'm We'll see you back soon. Come join us.